Boker Tov. Today's daf is Daf Pei Beis, the last daf in קידושין, as we learned for Achinu Kol Beis Yisrael and Asun Batzara B'Shivya. And we'll start actually from the last few lines on Pei Aleph on the Beis, which we didn't finish off yesterday. About 7 lines from the bottom of the page. 6 lines. Ravacha bar Abba, Iklo Lebei Rav Chisda. He went to the house of Rav Chisda Chasnei, his son-in-law. He went to visit his daughter and son-in-law and their family, right? Like some people are going to do this Shabbos, right? You visit your daughter and son-in-law and their family, right? So he went to this house. Shakli Basbarse, he took his granddaughter, nice young girl, and put her on his lap. And in an act of grandfatherly love, he held his granddaughter on his lap. Amrlei, so the son-in-law said to the father-in-law, sons-in-law don't always get along so well with the father-in-law. Lo Savalamar, don't you know the Makash? Don't you know she's a betrothed woman? I've actually got her engaged already. She was obviously under the age of 12 and a half. And he's already betrothed her to somebody. She's an Ashish Ish. How are you how are you holding an Ashish Ish in your hands? Amalei, you've married her off at this young age, even though in Torah you're allowed to. Avart Rav. You went against the rule of Rav. Damar Rav. Also, even though Torah you can, and maybe in days when the life expectancy was 16 or 18, maybe you had to marry them off earlier. But it's prohibited to marry off your daughter when she's young. Until she's old enough, she grows up. Until she grows up and says, "This is the guy that I want." You have to do it with her consent. So how did you betroth off this granddaughter of mine? Besides the fact you didn't invite me to the Erusin or to the Bort or to the whatever they call that, the L'chaim, they have a whole process in America, different stages, right? But you didn't invite me and I didn't know. And why did you do this without her consent as such a young girl? So the son-in-law retorted, Mar Nami of Shmuel, you've also violated what Shmuel said. You told me I violated what Rav said. You violated what Shmuel said. You're not supposed to use a woman at all, not for serving you, not for this, not for that. And certainly you're holding her on your lap. You're using a woman. You're not supposed to do that at all. Shmuel said many things, but it didn't apply when he said that. He didn't mean holding my own granddaughter. Because I hold the other law of Shmuel says, it depends what your intentions are. Yes, unfortunately, we know that there are people in the South who cannot be trusted with their granddaughters, right? Not the South of Israel, I mean, South in America. But in general, person does l'shem shemayim. What does it mean? It says Rashi, beautiful. So he has no sexual intent when he's holding his granddaughter. He just wants to show how he loves her. And I want to bring nachas to the child's mother, when I show her how much I love the granddaughter. That's a great sign for my daughter. So of course there's no evil intention here. So this Ravacha bar Abba taught a lesson to Rav Chisda, his son-in-law. Rav Chisda, the great Rav Chisda, apparently married her off early and ridiculed him. And the father-in-law had a little fight over here, right? Not clear whether Rav Chisda meant it seriously, or he just was trying to give him a retort, as rabbis do. You caught me with Rav's halacha, I'll tell you Shmuel's halacha. He says, no, Shmuel's halacha is for other people, but not for a grandfather with a granddaughter. So again, this concept of yichud that we've said, that you're not supposed to have, a man should not be yachad with 2 women, as we said, right? Because it might lead to some immoral conduct. But a woman could go with 2 men. However, we qualified that, so that's only 2 men who are tzaddikim, who are kosher. We can't trust ourselves. So the Lamaisa, 2 men should not be miyachad with a woman, and 1 man should be miyachad with 2 women, and certainly 1 man with 1 woman should not have yichud. Because of these laws of not having yichud and what it can lead to, we'll see now cases where even if it's more than 2 people, even if a man is with more than 2 women, presumably based on the Mishnah, 1 man with a whole group of women wouldn't be a problem because he's not going to, 1 or 2 women wouldn't consort with him. There's many other people there. There's too many witnesses. Be afraid, be embarrassed. However, there are cases where the man should not. Now the Gemara is going to talk about fields or crafts that a person should not go into because he'll have too much to do with women, and that could lead to problems. Says the Mishnah from the top of Pei Beis. A person who is single, so he shouldn't learn to be a sofer. Sofer means a teacher of children. A sofer is like a rabbi or a sofer who write things down and learn sifrus. A person without a wife should not teach little children. Why? What's wrong with teaching children? So we'll see the Gemara. What's the reason why? But also with Isha sofer, a woman also should not be a teacher of little children. Why? We'll see. Not only a person who is single and that was never married. Ravak usually means Ravak means the person was never married. But it's not only a person doesn't have a woman doesn't have a wife right now. Not only a person doesn't have a wife right now, but even a person who has a wife, we'll see. But he had a wife once. Maybe she died. Maybe they got divorced. Even if he had a wife once and he doesn't have a wife now, he's also suspect and should not be a teacher of children. Yudomer lo yira Ravak Bema. Not only teaching children, but a shepherd who is single should not be a shepherd for animals. Now, this clearly takes it a little bit further, right? That you're concerned about the man committing bestiality with an animal. Now, two Jewish men should not sleep with one cover, one talus, or one blanket. Obviously, if they're naked. The Chacham matim, the Chacham are mat to this, and we'll see the halachas like the Chacham when it comes to certain things. So what are we concerned about? My time, what's the reason why you shouldn't teach? Are you concerned that a man should not teach little children Torah because, or anything for that matter, because you're concerned about what they call pederasty, for you consider homosexuality with the children? But Tanya Amla Rav Yehuda, they told Rav Yehuda after he said you shouldn't even be a shepherd if you're single. Jewish people in general are not suspected of homosexuality or bestiality. You're not suspected of that. So what are you telling me? You shouldn't be a shepherd? And they're not suspected of homosexuality either. So what's wrong over here that a man should not teach children? What do you mean a single man? The reason why a single man should not teach children is because the mothers bring him to school. When they bring him to the schoolhouse, he's going to have too much contact with these different women. So here we're saying it's not, it might lead to yichud. This is not yichud per se, but it could lead to yichud because he's going to have too much to do with the mothers who bring their children. Isha mishum avasa diruk, and a woman should not teach little children because the fathers might bring them to school. In other words, you should avoid contact as much as possible between single men and women, and between women in general and men. Because by Isha, it doesn't make any difference if she's married or not, right? By a man, we say, if he's single, there's a problem. We'll see, even if he's single or if he's not married right now. If he's married, his wife will sort of, take care of him and keep him from too much contact. But a woman, we don't say it because the man usually, the woman usually, guards her husband. But the husband isn't necessarily there at home. He's out working or wherever he is. And therefore, if the wife is a teacher, that could lead to problems with the various men who bring their children to the schoolhouse. So what does Rabbi say? Not only a single person. We're talking about a person who's never a woman at all, doesn't have a wife now at all. Meaning, the Tanna Kama said only a person who's never been married, a ravak. Usually in modern Hebrew also, a ravak is a person who's never been married. If he's been married, if he's a widow, we call him an almon, and if he's divorced, we call him a garush, right? But ravak means a person who's never been married. So Rabbi Lezer added on, even a person doesn't have a wife now. Doesn't mean he doesn't have a wife at all. Maybe he has a wife, but she works in a different place. She's out of town. She doesn't live with him now. Toshma. If we're saying even if a man does not have a wife living with him, he should also not become a school teacher. Obviously, it depends on the situation and situations today. Rav Moshe had all these kinds of shilas who could be teachers today. It depends on the situation. It depends on how much pikuach is there, if it's in a schoolhouse where there's other people, etc. Each case has to be judged individually. Rav Yehuda said a person who is single should never, a person like a bachelor single should not be a shepherd. They told the Israelim in general unless there's reason to suspect them. In general, they're not suspected of homosexuality or bestiality, and therefore the halacha is not like Rav Yehuda. Says the Mishnah. Again, Kol Sha'asakav, you should not only that was talking, the Mishnah was talking about becoming a school teacher, and the problem there is if you're single, you're not married, you don't have a wife, and you have all these women bringing their children to you, it might lead to temptation. Other crafts and jobs that a person should not do. A person, sometimes because he's in a certain field, he's got to be careful not to be miyachad with them. In other words, he's got a certain kind of a job, and his umnus is like he's a particular he's a tailor, or he's a shoemaker, or he's a whatever he is, a money changer. Got to be careful not to be miyachad with women, because women obviously approach him for his services. And a person should not purposely teach his son a craft that's going to involve women. So now, once we talk about these things that you should not teach, and the Gemara will talk about it again, that the Mishnah was related to the idea that you shouldn't have yichud, as we've described before, and not only shouldn't you have yichud, but you shouldn't, if your job is not only shouldn't you have yichud. So the Mishnah is going to go on to talk about not only yichud, but talk about various jobs. So we're talking about what's good jobs and what's bad jobs. In other words, what are clean jobs for people who are Shemayim. But first, he says that if you're in a field that involves women have to come to you for purchases or for services or whatever, be careful not to be miyachad. And here Rashi says, Afilu, take a look at the Rashi in the second Mishnah, a little bit further down. In the Mishnah, Afilu im harbe noshim, even as many lefi shalibo gaspu, because when he deals with women regularly, he feels comfortable with them. Let's say you're a storekeeper. This lady comes in a few times a week to make purchases, so you're friendly with her. But because they all like him, they deal with him, they will cover up for him. If it's a regular person, we said before, you shouldn't have yichud with two women, not only with one woman, but even with two women. We said before that the Mishnah before said you shouldn't be yichud with two women. That's called yichud because they have nashim daitos kalios, and they might cover up for one another. They might lose their embarrassment. But now we're saying that you have to be careful with when your job involves dealing with women, even with more women. He says, I feel in a regular case, you shouldn't be miyachad with two women, but with three or four, it's okay. If you happen to be sitting somewhere and there was 3 or 4 women, that's not a problem of yichud. But here we're saying, even if there's many women, you shouldn't, because you feel comfortable with them and they feel comfortable with you, and that could lead to immorality. So he says, well, the Mishnah goes on, back in the Mishnah, you should teach your son a craft that's clean and easy. Now, clean doesn't necessarily mean only physically clean, but it means clean from leading to gzela, from stealing, and pardon? Temptation, not only sexually, but even from there shouldn't be any financial wrongdoings, etc. It should be a person that can lead a clean, righteous life, and we'll see what that means. Be a spalan at the same time. You should also pray to the one who owns everything, all that all the wealth and assets belong to him. Of course, that's God. It doesn't depend on the craft. It used to say that if you go into medicine, you'll be rich, right? That's not so true anymore with the laws that they've made, right? That not necessarily not all doctors and dentists and lawyers are wealthy. We used to say, teach them something, right? So he says, because the umnus is not every craft that there is, there are people who are poor and there are people who are rich in that craft. Poverty does not come from the craft, and nor does wealth. So it all depends on the schus of the person. Tosfos here points out that it doesn't mean the schus of the person is good or bad. Mazel is mazel. The Bani Chayv is on a famous line in the Gemara that children, how many, what kind they are, and how long a person will live, and his income, his mazonos, meaning his livelihood, it depends on his mazel. Now, we learned the Gemara in the beginning of Sota. It says that when a baby is born, when a baby is conceived, the Tifas come to him and said, whether he's going to be God-fearing, that depends on him. But everything else, tall, short, big, strong, weak, wealthy, poor, whatever, that depends on his mazel. Of course, a person can change his mazel, say the mafarshim, by being misfollow. But the point is that there are rich lawyers and poor lawyers. There are rich. I don't think there's any poor politicians, but there could be, in theory, there could be
on a temporary basis.
Only a temporary basis, right? But in general, the poverty and wealth does not depend on the trade; it depends on the person. Have you ever seen a wild beast or a bird that's got a craft, a trade? They have no problem. You ever see them? Birds flying around or animals, they have plenty of food. They have no problem eating. They were only created to serve me, says Reb Shimon Elazar. And I was created to serve my master, the one who requires me, Hashem. If they who were created to serve me, they get their livelihood easily without having to work for it. So I was created to serve God. Shouldn't I also be able to have a parnasa without any suffering and pain? I've done evil. Going back to Adam Rishon, the kipachtes parnasas, and it destroyed my parnasa because of that. Abaguria and Ishtan said, you say Mishum Abaguria, said in the name of Abaguria, a similar name. Well, a person should not teach his son to be these trades. What are they? Chamar is a donkey driver. Gamal, a camel driver. Kadar is also like a wagon driver. Some say Kadar is a potter who sells his stuff from place to place. He takes the stuff around. These people do a lot of traveling. Sapan, a sailor. Now, the problem with these things are that they steal from other people. In other words, a person who is a donkey driver, a camel driver, whatever, wagon driver, they go around from place to place, and they have their animals graze on other people's land. And sometimes they don't fulfill their job. They were sent to do something. Same thing with a sailor, but we'll see. That could also be. We'll see where there's a difference between them. Say the Gemara, roa or a shepherd. They take their animals. They have them graze in other people's fields. Chanvani, the chanvani is apt to not always keep accurate books, or maybe with the wheat he'll throw in some pebbles in there, cheat a little bit. Shum nasanum listen, because their craft is that of robbers. And it's very hard to stay honest in that kind of a job. Rabbi Omer Mishmo said in his name, I guess, of Abaguria, Hachamaran Ruben Rasham. Most of the donkey drivers are Rasham because they, like we said, their animals graze in other people's fields. Like Amon Rumsham, the camel drivers who go across deserts and long distances, they're always praying to God because they don't know when they'll find water, and they're always in a dangerous situation. Most of them are kosher. Hasapanan, the ones, the sailors who go out to sea and they don't know if they're going to come back at all. Reuben Hasidim, they are mostly Hasidim. They are pious because they're always praying to God to save them. The best of the doctors of Gehenna. I can fortunately explain this. It does, of course, doesn't necessarily mean today. It means, when they used to do surgery, physical, surgery with metal objects on people and make a little mistake and kill the guy. So you got to be careful with those kinds of doctors. And the best of the butchers, these means also the shoftim, they are like the partner of Amalek, because again, they'll easily, if there's a suffix, if it's a treifa, and they're worried about losing their money, today it's set up in a way that there's no financial incentive to say something that's not kosher that it is. But in those days when it was a single person, he was the shochet and he was the butcher and all that. So it was easily for him to cheat. So these are difficult crafts to go into. Naharai Omer. Famous lines. I would leave all of the trades of any Torah. I want to devote my son's life to learning Torah. As a person eats of its reward in this world. In other words, even the reward that you get in this world is only the payers, is only the fruit. But the principle, in other words, the profits, the derivatives are in this world, but the principle stays to the next world. And other crafts, they're not so. If you have a craft, you're a tailor or whatever, you're a scribe, whatever you do, you get sick, or you get old, or you come to suffering for whatever reason, and you can't work, or you'll starve, right? You have no income. The Torah is not that way. guards him from all, even but Arusa when he's young. But gives him a future and hope when he's older. But Arusa, what does it say in the pasuk we had this last week's Haftorah? V'kovei Hashem yachlifu koach, or koye, as it's written in some places. Koye Hashem, those who hope to God, yachlifu koach, their strength will be renewed. So what does it say when they're elderly? Omer, Odiduvim b'seifa, they will still bring forth fruit in their old age. The Chenu Omer Avram says by Avram Zakain, Avram became old. Hashem be'erachas Avram Akol, and Hashem blessed him with kol, the gematria kol. Then when all dead, Hashem blessed him. Matzinu she'asa Avram Avinu as kol tar kol. We find that Avram fulfilled the Otar Torah ad shalom nikna, before it was given. Obviously, it wasn't given until much later on. Shneimar ekev asher shema Avram, because Avram listened to my voice. By Yishmor Mishmarti, and he guarded my charge, mitzvosai, my commandments, chukosai, my statutes, v'sarosai, my laws. He kept all this. Because of that, he kept the Torah. And then what happened in his old age? It says Avram Zakain, Hashem Makol. Even in his old age, Hashem blessed him. So that's what we learned from Avram Avinu, that he was the father of all nations, and he was certainly the father of the Jewish people. So from him we learn that the best trade is Torah, and because of Torah, Hashem protected him in his old age as well. Tana Rabbanim. The Gemara now expands this. Anyone whose job is with women, if that's your business, that's your craft, your trade, surah, that's going to lead to a bad character. Kagom, Hatzorfim, the smiths, the Hasarikim, those that are they comb wool, they're called carders. They comb wool. Hanakuros, those that clean out. They put holes in the little mills that the women use, the hand mills. Varochlin, the peddlers who sell their perfumes and their spices to women. Vagardaim, and the weavers. Vasaparm, and the barbers. Vakopsim, and the launderers. Vagorea, the ones who scrape. The Gorea, we were talking about bloodletters. They would scrape the skin away and then blood would come out. Vabalan, and the bathhouse attendants. Vaburski, and the tanners. All these people have to do with women, right? Because it's the nature of their business to deal with women, and this could lead to bad things. So this is a bad character. Try to avoid those trades. If you have one of those trades, we don't. Even if a guy becomes wealthy from one of these trades, as we said before, the wealth isn't determined by the trade; it's determined by your schuyot or by your mazel. Even if he became wealthy, you don't make him a king. From anybody who had that trade, we don't make him a king v'lo kohen gadol. We don't appoint him to be a king or a kohen gadol if he's one of the trades. My time v'lo mishum depasul, not because they're puzzle necessarily, because these are not like the jobs we said before, like chenbani who steals, or a camel driver or wagon driver, whatever, who steals because he grazes in other people's lands, or shepherds. Not el mishum dezom side, because these are lowly trades, and it's not proper to have a kohen gadol or a melech who was that kind of who was a tanner or a launderer or something of that sort. Tan Rabbanim. There are 10 things that are said about a Mekes Dam, a bloodletter. What are they? Mahalach al tzido. He walks like on a side. These are signs of, like a big Shabruch Agassi. He's arrogant. It's all that. Most of these are arrogance, but these are 10 things specifically said about him. He walks like with a little bit of a tilt, and he's haughty. He's arrogant. V'nitla v'yoshev. He sits down, leaning back. It's a sign of guy. V'einot tzara. He's cheap, he's stingy, he grudges other people. In a raw, he gives people an ayin hara, it hurts them. Ochel harbe, he eats a lot, because whenever people make his dam, they have a big meal, because that weakens them temporarily, so they have a good healthy meal, and he eats always with them. It's like the moyel who always comes to the bris and has a good meal every day, because he's always eating at a bris, right? Umotzi kima, and because it eats healthy, he eats a lot. In other words, he's a very zaftika person, because he eats a lot and puts out very little. He emits very little, because it's healthy food. He's suspected of adultery, because he's hanging out with women. Balagezel, for stealing, right? And for murder, because these are things easy. Why are they suspected of stealing? Because women steal from their husband and give it to him. In other words, he's suspected of being too friendly with the women, and therefore he might commit adultery, and he might be suspected of stealing from the husbands of the women. And sometimes because sometimes he lets out so much blood that he actually kills the guy. Like we mentioned in the Mishnah, you should always try to teach your son a umnus which is clean. Now, the Mishnah, we said that too. Rav Meir said that in the Mishnah, saying the same thing. What's that? It means something which is clean, not only clean physically, but clean from stealing or things that lead to bad things. This is like embroidery or quilting, which is considered an easier kind of sewing. It's nice. It's a nice, clean work. And apparently it's not as common as regular seamstresses or tailors who are going to have to do too much with women. We said before that the tailor is not really one mentioned among those 10 mentioned in the Brisa, right? In the Mishnah we said anything has to do too much with women. If that's it, if he's a tailor for women, that could be a problem too. Didn't specify that in the Mishnah, right? But it did mention in the Gemara that if he combs wool, that might be something that deals with women, or a smith of some sort, a blacksmith or a silversmith, a goldsmith, things like that, where women are weavers. Maybe like doesn't say exactly a tailor. Maybe this kind of quilting or embroidery has less to do, or it's not common that the women come in and out. Tanya Rebbe Omer or Rav Meir Omer. There's no trade that really totally disappears. I guess we still have watchmakers, right? It's very hard to find a trade which is totally gone. Happy is he who sees his parents in a fine trade, a fine craft. Woe to he who sees his family in a defective, we'll call that a defective kind of a craft. Rashi says, as Horav, Yoldav, the Es Yoladav. It sounds like Rashi saying both parents and children. Yoladav, Es Yoladav. Sounds like Yoldav, Es Yoladav. You want to keep in the family, keep a nice, clean business. It's impossible for the world to exist without perfumers. People need, deodorants and perfume, etc. Uvaloborski, we also need tanners. Otherwise, we wouldn't have any leather goods. Ashmishim Nusabas says, happy is he whose trade, his craft is with perfume, with good smelling things. The guy always stinks if he's a tanner. The world cannot exist without both males and females. Happy is he whose children are male, if he has male children. And woe to the one who has the kavas. Only, obviously, we need both, but better to have boys than girls. Well, for whatever the reason you want to say, for learning Torah, etc. But Meir Omer, like we saw in the Mishnah, you should teach your son a craft which is clean and easy. It's still at the same time, pray to God, pray to the one who owns everything. Again, like you saw in the Mishnah, Anias does not come, poverty does not come from the trade that you're in. Right? You might say collecting trash, but there are people who've made a fortune out of collecting trash, right? Turned it into a big business. We call it recycling today. You used to be you just were a trash collector. Now you're a recycler. It doesn't come from the trade, right? Where poverty, neither poverty that comes from the particular trade nor wealth. Ella lemisha osha shalo. But whether you do is you pray for just from the one who owns everything, owns all the wealth. Hashem says this, and this is also found in Pirkei Avos. Remember that Hashem says, "Liya kesef, all the silver and all the gold is mine." So says Hashem, the Lord of Hosts. Have you ever found an animal that has to go work for his food? I never saw a deer who was drying out fruits in the field like we have to do. If you want to preserve your fruits, you dry them out in the field. I never saw a deer doing that. But I never saw a lion who was a sabal, a schlepper, a mover, whatever you want to call that, a schlepping stuff, a porter. I never saw a storekeeper, a fox who was a storekeeper. Famous Barnasim. and they seem to all have food. They get their shlobatzar without any pain. They were only created to serve me, and I was created to serve the one who made me, right? The one who acquired me, Hashem. These who were only created to serve me, they are able to get a livelihood without any pain. I was created to serve my master, and shouldn't I also be created without? Shouldn't I also be earn a livelihood without any pain or suffering? Ella Shehareos is definitely the same as we saw in the Mishnah. This is really in the Mishnah. I did evil in my deeds. I was evil in my deeds. And I destroyed my livelihood. Shenemar avonosechem bitu. Your sins caused you to turn away and to lose the ability to have an easy livelihood. They turned away the assets from you, so to speak. So here you see this is a brisa, but it's pretty much what we saw in the Mishnah, except he adds on about the idea that Tzvi Kayas and the Risabal and the Shulchan Aruch and this pasuk of Shneimar Avon Sechem Bitu. Rav Meir Omer. Any kolum so it's all the shiloh what is Rav Meir, Rav Meir, or somebody else, because we have both of them are found in the same Mishnah. Tanya Rav Meir Omer. I would forsake any other trade, any other craft in the world. Anyone else to teach my son only Torah. I'll do so. All other trades only help you when you're young, right? When you can earn it. When you're old and can't work anymore, what are you going to do? You're going to starve. Aval Torah ain't okay. Torah's not that. Do so. It helps him, stands for him when he's young. And it gives him a future and hope when he's older. It says, those who hope to Hashem will renew their strength. Yalu Aver Kanasharim. They will raise up like wings, like eagles. When he's older, it says they will still be fruitful in his old age. And we'll finish up Hashem tomorrow. We'll finish up when we make a siyum. We'll finish the Masechet, and that's also completes Seder Nashim, which is halfway through, right? We just completed the third Seder, which is 3 out of 6, right? We had, Zroim, Moed, Nezikin, Zman, and then Nokat, right? Now we have Nezikin, Kachim, and Taharos. So we finished now 3 out of 6 Starim halfway. And קידושין also marks the 20th Masechet out of 40 Masechtas that are learned in the Daf Yomi. There are many more Masechtas, 63 or 76, depending on how you count them, but most of those are mostly, the other ones are mostly just Mishnayos. But in the Seder of Daf Yomi that we learned, there are 40 Masechtas, and the end of the third Seder that we just finished, Nashim, קידושין, marks the 20th out of the 40. So we're halfway through in terms of Gemara, in terms of Masechtas, and we're halfway through in terms of Seder, the Seder. We learned three Sedarim, and now we have 3 more to learn. In terms of number of pages, we passed the halfway mark a few weeks ago, as I mentioned that. It says the Mishnah at the beginning of Baba Kama. Baba Kama is also, the Babas are called Nezikin. It was like, once it was like one big Masech. Nezikin was split up into Baba Kama, the first gate, the first Sha'ar, Baba Kama, the first one, Baba Metzia, the middle one, Baba Basra, the last one. Each one of them originally was like one Masechet of 30 prakim, and was divided up into 10, 10, and 10. Right? The Baba Kama is the first 10, Baba Metzia is the middle 10, and Baba Basra is the last 10. All those are altogether makes Masechet Nezikin. Now, when it comes to damages, we'll see if a person hurts somebody else, damaged somebody else. We learned many times that there's 5 things you pay: nezek, sari, pushevs, and boshes. You pay nezek, the damage itself. What is the person worth less now in the market? Nezek tsar, the pain that is shot stuff that is assessed in the court. Ripui, doctor bills, hospital bills, etc. Sheva's time off from work, and boshes, any shame that was caused to him. That also has to be assessed by a court. Okay, so that's when a person does damage. What about when your assets do damage? What do you mean by assets? Assets can mean your animals do damage, or fire. You started a fire and the fire went and burned something down, or you caused some nezek in the street. You put some obstacle or a pit in the middle of the street and caused somebody falling. You were digging a ditch, or you left something in the street that can cause damage to somebody, and somebody tripped and fell and hurt themselves. So those are the different kinds of damages we'll talk about. Again, the 5 things necessary becomes a bush is only when you directly did, when a person did the damage. When your assets, like your animals or your board, your pit that you created in the street, or your fire did damage, those things don't involve the other ones, but involves nezek. You have to pay. So if you count all these, there's actually more than 4. The Mishnah is Arba Avos Nezikin. There are 4 fathers, are main categories of Nezikin. But we'll see, are we talking about including the human being if you damage somebody else? So we'll see it's a machlokas whether that's one of the 4. However, your animals can do damage in several ways. An animal can do damage by goring. You know, a big animal like a shore or a deer or something like that, that's horns can gore. Can also do damage when it walks, right? Your animals walks. If your animal walk, let's say you have a big animal or even a small, you have a big dog, and the dog went into somebody else's property without permission. Now, what can it do? First of all, it can break things by stepping on it. That's called rego. And it can eat things up. Came into your yard and ate up your fruits and vegetables, right? So that's one. Or it could just damage by goring your animal or goring a person. So animals can do damage in those ways. The Mishnah says, Abros and Zikin, what are they? Shore and ox. Now, what does that mean? Does that mean the rego, the walking? Does it mean the shane, that when he eats? Does it mean goring? We'll see in the Gemara. Bore, we know. Bore means you dug a pit in the middle of the street, middle of Shusarabim, or some other obstacle there. Mave, what is mave? We're not sure what mava means. It's a strange word. Hever is H, that's fire. I started a fire and went and burned. That we understand. So bor and hever are pretty easy to understand. The other ones, the first and third, shore and mava, not clear. We'll see. Some say mava means a person. Others say no. It means really, it's like shane. It refers to the kind of damage that an animal does by eating, which is normal for him to do. It's normal for an animal to go eating. If I let my animal go into your yard, is it the animal's fault that he eats? No, an animal sees a fruit or vegetable, he's going to eat it, right? And if he's walking along, he's going to do damage in his normal. He's not trying to damage it, right? So when it comes to goring, that could be, it depends on his intention. That depends on the animal's intention. Maybe the first couple of times is what's called a tam, and he doesn't have to pay the full damage. If he's a regular damager, and we know that's his normal rate, then it's the owner's obligation to be a guard for him. So it's not clear at this point what shore and mav refer to. Shore obviously either means keren, it means damaging with his horns, meaning when he does it intentionally, or walking regel, or shane, or damaging by eating. It could mean any of those 3 or all of those 3. And mava, we're not sure what that means. The Gemara is going to have a machlokas about that. But bor and hever, we understand. Now they're different. Lo rea shor korea mava. The damage that a shore does, either regel, let's call that regel for the time being, regel, that he does by stepping on, is not like mava, which is shane, according to the predominant opinion Gemara, Shmuel's opinion Gemara, which is damn shane. Below area mava, korea shore, and the mava shane is not like shore. Why? Below zevazesh and ruachayim. Both those things are talking about an animal, person that's alive. An animal does damage by walking or by eating something, like fire, shemruachayim. Obviously, fire is not alive, right? They're different. But all these things have one common trait, that they go and do damage elsewhere, right? The fire goes and spreads and does damage elsewhere, and the animal goes and does damage where it goes. Like a boar is stationary. It's just sitting there. It's an obstacle or a pit, and that's different that way. What's the common denominator of all of them? Shedark and lahazik, that they normally do damage. Ushmirasan alecha, and it's your obligation to guard them from doing damage. Ukshahizik, and when they do damage, chav hamazik, the owner, the one who started the fire, or the one who the animal belongs to, or the one who dug the pit or created the obstacle, the chav hamazik l'sham tashlum, he has to pay for the nezek. Meitav haaretz, with the best of his land. Notice if he has different categories of land, like Edis, Benus, he's got to pay for the best, and that's what the Torah says, that you have to pay. In all these cases, you are the owner. You're responsible. If it's your animal, your boar, or your fire, you're responsible to pay for the damage, because these things normally do damage. When you create a fire, fire's damage. Animals, damage. So That's the normal thing. So you have to pay, you have to pay from the best, and you have to pay the entire amount. Money or karka. Money or you can pay, if you're paying, he says Meitavar, so you have to pay the best with Me'idas the Chasav Yigba, Mezaigo Imrots Lefro Karka. If he wants to pay with karka, if he wants to pay with cash is also good. But or with metaltlin, but he's paying with land, he's got to pay from the best of his land. So to this Gemara, this page Daf Beis is really tomorrow's Daf. It'll be on the podcast, and Amitz Hashem on Sunday we will pick it up from the top of Gimel. The Sunday's Daf is Daf Gimel. The top, the fourth word there is Amar Mar. We'll pick it up from there. So make sure you complete Daf Beis tomorrow on Shabbos. Shabbat Shalom, Besurot Tovot, and Refuah Shleimah to everybody.
Amen. Thank you. Everybody says that.
Really, Tzvi is doing okay. You saw the picture, right?
Yes. Baruch Hashem.
Hashem Shishar.
Hashem Tishmor everybody. Yeah.